before I offer my amendment, I would just like to note how pleased I was to hear how concerned Mr. Sutherland is about illegal and unregulated fishing. And I do look forward to his support for my bill, which is H.R. 69, which is intended to address that very significant problem. My amendment, Mr. Chairman, would allow the Secretary of Commerce to provide fishery data for the purposes of coastal and marine planning should the data provided be in the interest of national security or protecting access for fishermen. Language in the underlying bill prohibits fisheries data, even anonymous aggregate data, from being included in marine planning efforts under the National Ocean Policy. Now, I believe in the importance of data collection so that the data can accurately inform the interagency planning and decision-making by federal agencies on coasts and oceans. And, Mr. Chairman, I was pleased to hear that my colleagues, mainly Mr. Whitman, Mr. Burns, and you yourself, Mr. Chairman, strongly believe in data and scientific information. With data sharing, fishermen would have a say in the planning of coastal engineering projects or offshore energy exploration, which could have potential negative impacts on fisheries and habitats. Fishermen on the Pacific coast have been frustrated by the potential for wind farms to be sited on fishing grounds, and fishermen on the Atlantic coast want their voices to be heard before seismic testing ramps up off their shores. And I know that fishermen on Guam would want a seat at the table if any new marine protected areas are up for consideration. Now, this data is crucial in staking out their traditional fishing grounds. Data sharing will ensure that there is accurate information that moves forward with such energy projects, but also takes into account the location of fish stocks. So finally, Mr. Chairman, I am introducing this amendment to coordinate our national security efforts at sea, which is important to areas like the Western Pacific and the Gulf of Mexico, barring fishery data from being used in marine planning could have the unintended consequences of endangering lives. If the data on when and where a U.S. fleet is fishing cannot be shared with the Coast Guard or the Navy to inform interagency planning on safety at sea, counterterrorism, or anti-illegal fishing operations, it will be much more difficult and time-consuming to identify potential threats and respond to emergency situations. So for this reason, Mr. Chairman, I'm offering this amendment to provide fishery data for coastal and marine planning for national security and fisheries access purposes. It is an amendment that protects local and states' rights, but more importantly, is responsive to the needs of our fishermen. So I do urge its adoption, and I yield back.
I recognize myself for 5 minutes. I understand what the